Hi everyone, hope you all are doing well. So this is a new concept which I am exploring. It is the tier list concept. So I'm going to try to actually use this for ranking the various metabolic pathways. I've chosen 9 main metabolic pathways which we mostly study about. This is not an exhaustive list, of course. It's just 9 pathways, but I think since most of us are familiar with these pathways, it's appropriate to go with it. So these pathways are TCA cycle, Urea cycle, beta oxidation of fatty acids, Electron Transport Chain, fatty acid synthesis, Gluconeogenesis, Pentose phosphate pathway, Glycolysis, and Glycogen metabolism. Now, they are not in any order currently, they're just randomly distributed, but we are going to put them into various tiers. Now, how am I going to actually put them in these tiers? So I have chosen 3 main parameters. The first one is ATP production efficiency. So we are going to see how much energy output each of these give, and based on that, they will rank higher. The next one is metabolic centrality. So how well integrated these pathways are. Now, some pathways are very highly integrated and some are not very much integrated. They are playing their solo game. So that is also going to affect their ranking. And the last one is irreplaceability of function. This will tell us how necessary it is, and without it, there is no other pathway that can fulfill that necessity. If some pathway has that, it will definitely be higher ranked. Okay, so I'm going to choose a random pathway here. I want to start with TCA cycle. Okay, it's a favorite topic, it's a favorite question, and it's also something that students really enjoy studying in the beginning. I feel I enjoyed it. Now, if I had to rank it, let's think about it. One of our criteria was the metabolic centrality, right? So TCA cycle is a very integrated pathway, if you remember. In fact, it's also called an amphibolic pathway, which means it accepts substrates from all the 3 macronutrients and is the main supplier of high energy carriers. Now, these high energy carriers go into electron transport chain and they produce energy indirectly. And even it produces 1 ATP, right? So definitely it is producing energy. It is very highly integrated and it is very much irreplaceable. So I feel it can go into the A tier. I won't give it the S tier yet because some of these have, I have a feeling that some of these can go into that S tier more easily. But it's very high ranking in our list. That is the A tier. Okay, now let me select fatty acid synthesis. Okay, so fatty acid synthesis of fats is essential for structural integrity, long-term storage, right? And it is essential for membrane phospholipids. Without fats in starvation states and long fasting states, it's a really hard time for the body to acquire energy. So it's definitely having a lot of value, but it's not generating energy directly. It's mostly having value during the long-term starvation states, right? So no immediate value. So for that reason, it will be below TCA cycle, I feel. So I'll rank it in B. Okay. The next pathway I want to see is pentose phosphate pathway. So many students actually forget this pathway, but it is a very important one. It is the only pathway, I would say, which is generating NADPH, right? This is different from NADH, right? NADPH. And this NADPH helps against reactive oxygen species. So a lot of oxidative stress is evaded with the help of this. And also it produces ribose 5-phosphate, which is helping in DNA synthesis. So it is very indispensable. There's nothing replacing it. So I wouldn't give it an F or C. It should either be in S or A or B. But directly there is no energy production. So I can't give it an S. Now between A and B, it is very unique. It is very important. But in terms of energy and its centrality, I think it's lacking and it will be below TCA cycle. So I'll give it a B tier. Let's go with urea cycle now. Now urea cycle is very important for detoxification, right? The detoxification of ammonia is done by urea cycle and it produces this waste disposal product that is very important. But there's one problem. It takes up 4 ATP. So it's consuming ATP. It's no way producing any ATP. And of course, it is indispensable. There is no other pathway that can do what it does because of the ATP reason and because it's a pathway which is playing its own game in a way. So for that reason, I think it can go into the C tier. In terms of energy and integration, it is lesser than the others. So I would put it into the C tier. Okay, we are done with the urea cycle. Let's go to glycolysis. Now, immediately, if you think about glycolysis, it's a pretty important pathway. And I feel without even discussing, we can directly put it into the S tier. And why? Because it is highly centralized, highly integrated, and it's producing lots of ATP. And at the same time, it is generating NADH, FADH2, which are going into electron transport chain for even more ATP. Another unique thing is that it is active in all cells, and it is active in all environments, be it aerobic, anaerobic, you name it. It deserves the S tier, I feel. Okay, now let's move to gluconeogenesis. So one big problem here is gluconeogenesis is important. I'm not going to deny that. And of course, all pathways are important, but we need to remember our criteria here. If you recall, gluconeogenesis actually takes up 6 ATP to create one glucose molecule. It's definitely essential during fasting states and even starvation. But because of this high energy intake or use, it can't be in the top 3. Now I just have to decide between the C and F tier. I think if we have to compare the urea and the gluconeogenesis is taking up 6 ATP, urea cycle is not taking up that much. So just because of that reason, I think it will be the F tier. Not because it's completely useless, but only because of the reasons, which is the ATP production. It is useful in the long term. Certain role can arise occasionally, but if you compare with the other metabolic pathways, this is where it should be. Okay, now we are coming to the final 3. Okay, let's go with beta oxidation now. Now, beta oxidation is too valuable during starvation and fasting. It breaks down those fatty acids and it gives tons of energy and glucose. It is essential for survival. Without beta oxidation, the fatty reserve usage would be very less. So because of its high survival value, it has to be in either of these 3 categories. Now, because it is indirectly producing so much ATP, but on a daily basis and on a short-term basis, it has less value. It mostly has value during the long term. When you compare with glycolysis, its values every single minute, I would say, every single second. But beta oxidation has a more longer term value, but it has a lot of value. So for that reason, I'll just put it in the A tier, just below glycolysis and beside TCA cycle. And it is quite integrated as well, so it deserves it. Now we are left with the final 2. Okay, so now let's go to electron transport chain. Okay, so electron transport chain is the point where all the ATP synthesis occurs. And I would say 90% of the entire ATP of the body is produced here. So many cofactors go there and it's continuously working. And if it stops, I think the person would die. And this happens in cyanide poisoning actually. If you remember, cyanide poisoning can block the complex 4 or inhibit it. And this can lead to death. So electron transport chain is literally supporting survival. And even slight disturbances can be fatal because of the reasons of its energy production capabilities and because of its survival value. I think it is right beside glycolysis in the S tier. Okay, so the final one which we are left with is glycogen metabolism. Where do you think I should put this? Okay, so it's good to guess because your analytical capabilities can be tested. So according to me, glycogen metabolism is C tier because there is glycogenesis, glycogenolysis, but the glycogen reserves are very less. They end up very quickly. It provides a short-term solution for energy. It is like the cash you keep in your wallet, easy to grab, but it's quickly gone. And after that, other pathways are more valuable. And other than that, the glycogen metabolism mostly plays its own game. It creates glycogen and destroys it. Nowadays, a lot of glycogen storage disorders are being diagnosed actually, but there is possibility of survival in these patients. Unlike the other pathways where survival would be even more hampered. Okay, so that wraps up our entire metabolism tier list. And of course, some of you will not be happy with this list, and I totally understand because everyone has a different logic, but we just used 3 main criteria, and based on that, we did this, and we learned a lot, right? We learned about how much ATP each one generates. We learned about how integrated a pathway is, and we learned about how it compares to the other pathways. So this is where you start. When you know this is the importance of these pathways, you can better prioritize as well where you should focus on more. That can be really valuable for students who have less time. So hope you enjoyed this style of teaching, and I hope to see you soon in the next one. Thank you for watching.